The Panthers not only have one, but two Selke finalists. Brad Marchand will be facing the Leafs for the fifth time in the postseason, and Brandon Hagel had a few words for Aaron Ekblad.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Sunday, May 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X and Blue Sky at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at @LO_FLA Panthers and on Blue Sky at LOFLA Panthers. You can follow the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. And if you're on the YouTube, make sure to press that like button down below. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONHL for $20 off your first purchase. So, Florida Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. And surprise, we have a Sunday show for you guys because there has been a lot of topics of conversation to talk about when it comes to everything with the Florida Panthers and with the schedule coming out. At least game one, it was released on Friday. I wanted to discuss more topics when it come to the Florida Panthers because we will be doing a crossover with Locked On Leafs prior to game one on Monday night. But as we spoke at the beginning, we'll be discussing the previous series a little bit, Selke finalists, and then in segment number 3, we will be doing a preview to the series between the Florida Panthers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And here to discuss this with me, she is from NHL.com, Amalie Benjamin. And Amalie, welcome back to the show. We've spoken a whole bunch on this series off the record in person when we were both covering the series in Florida and Tampa. But welcome to the show as we get to discuss the previous series and the next series on the record. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much as well for coming on the show. So I want to start off with just your overall impressions from the Florida Panthers, just how they finished the season to what you thought was going to happen, and then everything that transpired in the series between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning as resulted in the Panthers winning in 5 games. So I'm going to give you the floor for that to start off.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we all had a few questions. You see the way the Panthers finished the season. It was a little shakier than we've seen them in the past. They have a lot of injuries. Aaron Ekblad is out because of a suspension. Matthew Tkachuk is not available. You have a bunch of guys coming in from the trade deadline who are sort of getting up to speed. And also, Brad Marchand is injured for a little while. So, they weren't at their full potential down the stretch. But man, did they turn it on in the postseason. It's sort of cliche to say that a switch was flipped, but it really feels like it was. I was actually talking to Brad a little bit after game 5 about how this team was able to do that and how this team was able to just sort of turn it on. And he said, we know what the stakes are, this Florida Panthers team and himself coming from, having been in the playoffs so much, having had so much success, they know what the regular season means down the stretch. And for them, it didn't mean a whole lot. And then once the playoffs came, they know what to do. They know how they have to do it. They know how to get ready. They know how to get, sort of mentally prepared. And they were able to do it. And I think it was really a very impressive takedown of what is a very good Tampa Bay Lightning team. Like that was a team that a lot of people said, myself included, could make the Stanley Cup final. And they just had a really professional series, a really good series, and it only took 5 games, and the Lightning head home. So it was an impressive showing for the Panthers.
Yeah, and you think that, I mean, when you think about just the Stanley Cup playoffs as a whole, I mean, you have one series out west, Avalanche Stars, that just finished last night with Mikko Rantanen scoring a hat trick in the third period, and just you have 2 series ends that are Eastern and Western Conference final worthy for them. And I mean, a lot of people complain about the format, but I mean, it created so much drama in it when you're thinking about the rivalry and then thinking about just the Battle of Ontario, even though the Maple Leafs survived for not blowing lead for them. So, I mean, it was just a lot of great theater. And to think that, hey, there's no, four of the six original six teams are based in the U.S. None of them made it, but still, it just made for incredible theater for the Stanley Cup playoffs just as a whole. And there's still one game to go here tonight between the St. Louis Blues and the Winnipeg Jets. But I do want to get just your take on just what else has just been said after the fact. But Brandon Hagel, during their locker cleanout, discussed about the hit from Aaron Ekblad. I mean, this could go into effect for the Panthers long term in this series because of the fact that he still has one game to serve for his suspension. But Brandon Hagel discussed that he was willing to drop the gloves if needed to. The Panthers didn't seem like that they were going to go in that direction, because I was saying, okay, the suspension for Aaron Ekblad and for Brandon Hagel looked like enough that they didn't have to. But I mentioned this. It was a little bit of a selfish act from Aaron Ekblad to take his own liberties at Brandon Hagel, and then talking about you could play with a broken leg, you could play with a sprain, but you only have one brain. And I think about it as someone who has been concussed before. I can kind of relate to what Brandon Hagel was talking about a few days ago. So just I want to hear what you have to say when you heard those quotes from Hagel.
I mean, I very much understand where Brandon Hagel is coming from. I mean, headshots can't be in the NHL. It can't be in the game of hockey. And, I think we sort of all knew that Aaron Ekblad was going to get some supplemental discipline for that hit. It was not a good hit. And the Panthers play on the line. They play aggressively. They have big hitters, but they have to make sure that as a team and Ekblad in particular, stay on the right side of that line. And there's really no excuse for shots that go to the head. And so, I think that the league takes this very seriously. And that's why we saw a 2-game suspension, which, as you mentioned, is going to bleed into this next series. I mean, the good news for the Panthers is they well know how to play without Aaron Ekblad. They didn't have him for 20 games. He came back for 2, out for 2 more. So, but it is not a reputation that you want to have in the league as a guy who is headhunting. And I think that, Aaron Ekblad is going to have to be very careful with the way he plays going forward in this series and in these playoffs, because there's certainly going to be an eye on him.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that this is happening early on for the Panthers could be beneficial as far as hey, there's a certain line that they won't cross it again. At least that's what I'm hoping for them. But also, I mean, credit to Seth Jones on what he's able to do in games 1, 2, and 5. And Aaron Ekblad, it took a little bit for him to get back to his feet after a rough game 3 and then scoring that game-tying goal in game 4. But also, I mean, Seth Jones also spoke about his experience with playing hockey, not coming from a traditional family, and then also for him, just how he's able to be taken to that role. But I believe that for blue liners, especially, the chemistry is just, you can mix up your forward lines, but it's hard. But Paul Maurice and Sylvain Lefebvre are less willing to mix up their D pairs because you need more of that chemistry for them together on where to pinch, where to puck support, especially in the D zone, especially for battles in the corner. So I'm just interested to see. I know that they've won 3 games without him, but I'm for the Panther side of things, it's a little worrisome when you think about how much you have to put Seth Jones back on the top line and then put him back with Mikkola. Thankfully for the Panther side of things, they were able to mix that up in the end of the regular season to at least for them to get to know each other's games, in the example of Jones and Mikkola. So this is where I think that it could really affect going into this next series.
Absolutely. I mean, Aaron Ekblad is a very good defenseman, and not having him is not great for the Panthers. But as we said, trading for Seth Jones has been such a boon for the Panthers, and he really has looked revitalized. I think he really struggled with where the Chicago Blackhawks were in their rebuild, in their timeline. They were struggling. They were having a really tough season, and I think that he has looked I already used the word revitalized, but he really has had a jump to his game that we didn't see in Chicago. It's a big number in the salary department, but Jones has really been a revelation for the Panthers. He's been everywhere they needed to be. He's been chipping in some offense, and he's a guy that can just eat minutes, eat so many minutes. Like, he's a strong guy, a guy who can really fill a lot of roles for them. And it was a tremendous addition by Bill Zito. We say that all the time. He has made so many right moves. He has pushed so many right buttons for this Panthers team. You don't get to the Stanley Cup final and win a cup without having a GM who is making some really savvy moves. But especially in light of everything that has happened to Aaron Ekblad, the Seth Jones move looks even savvier for Bill Zito.
Yeah, and to think that you're coming to the rink expected to win versus it's a little bit discouraging whenever you're going into a locker room every single time and you know where the Blackhawks timeline is versus if your desires are to go elsewhere. And Seth Jones definitely got his wish, but we got a lot more to talk about in the show where we are going to discuss that the Panthers have not one but two Selke finalists this year in the voting, and we are going to get Amalie's opinions about that and more coming up next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. And ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check all your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You could track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. Also, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And the Stanley Cup playoffs are here. And if you've never been to a live NHL playoff game, it's unlike anything else. The intensity, speed, energy in the building, it's next level. And thanks to Game Time, getting in the door is easier and more affordable than ever. Game Time is the fastest way to grab playoff tickets, even for those must-see matchups. Prices actually drop as puck drop gets closer. With last-minute deals, you can save up to 60%. Save up to 60% buying tickets for sports, concert, comedy, theater, and more. Their all-in pricing shows the total cost up front, no surprise fees at checkout. The app shows panoramic seat views, so you know exactly what you're getting before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Segment number 2 here on this Sunday, May 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for those listening, May the 4th be with you for everyone. But here once again with Amalie Benjamin of NHL.com. So as she covered the first round series between the Panthers and the Lightning, and will also be covering the Panthers Leafs series for NHL.com coming up. And so it was announced for the Panthers that the Panthers will not only be have one, but two Selke finalists for them. Barkov is who won in 2021 and 2024, and Sam Reinhart, who finished 4th last year and is now a finalist this year. And with the Panthers, a defensively minded team, one of the best penalty kills in the NHL, especially on the road. 12 shorthanded goals, including Reinhart with 5 of them this year. So, and this is the first time since 2008 that there has been 2 Selke finalists. So when you hear that, Amalie, I know working for NHL.com, you can't vote for the awards. So your take on when you see Reinhart and Barkov here when it comes to them being a finalist for this award.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely says something about the team and the structure and the defensive mindedness, as you said, of this team. When you see two guys nominated for the Selke, I obviously was lucky enough in my career to spend a lot of time watching Patrice Bergeron, being based in Boston, and really is amazing to see, how Barkov has sort of taken that mantle over of that just preeminent defensive center, two-way guy who just locks down the opponent and is still able to provide offense. He's not just a defensive center, can really play the 200-foot game. And he's just tremendous. And I think he's the kind of player that just has that subtlety in his game that you really only can fully appreciate when you watch him on a day-to-day basis, day after day, and you see all those little things that he does. And Sam Reinhart really has made a jump up into this conversation to be a guy who can score, 57 goals and still be considered for the Selke Trophy is an unbelievable achievement. And I think that we have seen him build this into his game over his career. And I know that the influence of playing with someone like Barkov makes a big difference in the way that playing with Patrice Bergeron made a huge difference in Brad Marchand's defensive game. And he became a very good defensive forward. So you can really see the impact and influence of Barkov, in his own game and then also in Reinhart's game.
Yeah, and then Reinhart discussing with the media yesterday just how they're both defensively minded and know when to attack, especially because Paul Maurice likes to put them as the second pair out on the ice, likes to start off with Nico Sturm there, and even spoke about how it helps them with the minutes so they're not overtaxing them. But hey, it doesn't seem like a problem for Aleksander Barkov as two guys who love that part of the game, and it really helps appreciate the well-roundedness of the two. And Reinhart putting a little bit of a joke saying is like, oh, I hope that I win because he's won enough of them, getting two of them. But also, Maurice, if there's one thing that he loves to discuss over and over again, it's just how when it comes to Sam Reinhart and praising him, just talking about Ron Francis, he's one of the best players that he's ever coached when it comes to just his overall hockey IQ. And to think that Sam Reinhart has only been here for not even half a decade, and he has 10 shorthanded goals, including 5 this season. The franchise record for the Panthers is 16 with Radek Dvorak, and Barkov is 4 away from breaking that record for them. So they have 7 more years under contract to try to break that record for them. But when it comes to this award for the Panthers and just overall of how this is viewed in the NHL. It's more reputation based as well. Barkov, he had to be a finalist first before people started voting for him as like the actual winner. And just like how I mentioned earlier, Reinhart was 4th last year. Now is in the top 3. And I didn't even mention the other one, the other finalist, Anthony Cirelli of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think for the, as far as these two being part of the award, it's really hard for a winger to win this award. But hey, I also think about for Sam Reinhart and what he does on both sides of the ice on special teams, especially depending on what side of the ice. Paul Maurice is not afraid to put Sam Reinhart on one side to take the draw as well for the Panthers to get a clear out of their own end too. So I think that's so valuable. The fact that he has played center, especially in his Buffalo days, especially how his game has upped so much when Jack Eichel was dealing with his injury in Buffalo. So I think that gives him a big chance to at least win it. I'm not sure if he does, but what do you think whenever you think about that part of the game for him?
I mean, my inclination is probably that it would go to Barkov or Cirelli, both of whom have just, as you said, it's taken a little while. It takes a little while to sort of appreciate those defensive aspects of the game. Also helped that Bergeron retired and he's not an option anymore.
Yeah.
I do think that Reinhart has made tremendous strides, and he really has just taken a focus on that aspect of his game and taken it to heart and really has integrated it into his bag of tricks. And I think that when you have that defensive commitment from sort of your stars on down, it makes a huge difference in your overall team defense and your overall desire for guys, on the fourth line, third line, to make that commitment as well. Everyone talks so much about, the off the ice work and stuff like that when that's coming from your stars. And that applies to defensive commitment as well, for sure.
Yeah, and it really helps the other lines just balancing out everything, knowing that your top line is setting the example for them. So that's another thing on just how it up and down the lineup, it's so helpful. And also Sergei Bobrovsky discussed how Sasha Barkov is so responsible that he believes that he could play goalie. I mean, even for the Four Nations, for Barkov, when they were running the 5-forward power play, Barkov was used as the point man. And even when the Panthers were running a 5-forward power play, when Andrew Brunette was the coach, Barkov was used as the point man for the Panthers there. So it's just you could play Barkov anywhere. Just his hockey IQ is just up the charts for him. Reinhart has played 79 games this season, Barkov 67. So that might help his case when it comes to possibly winning it. So we will see down the line to see if it actually does. So we'll see when the results come out later on later on for them. But we have a lot more to get to on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. The round 2 schedule for the Panthers and the Leafs came out. Matthew Tkachuk had a little bit of a chirp to the Leafs, and Brad Marchand, we're going to discuss him as he will be facing the Leafs in the postseason for the 5th time in his career. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Upwork. And scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives you businesses flexibility by connecting them with freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork keeps hiring people simple and affordable. If you need to help with marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with freelance expert who deliver incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day with multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale my business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com. Upwork.com, connecting with top talent and grow your business today. Okay, that's good. Guys, we're doing great. Third and final segment here on this Sunday, May 4th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Here with Amalie Benjamin of NHL.com to discuss everything with the Florida Panthers and their upcoming second round series between them and the Toronto Maple Leafs due to the results of the Stars Avalanche game. We know when the games will happen. We don't know all the start times. We know that Monday's game will be at 8 p.m. on ESPN for the Panthers and the Leafs. Wednesday, May 7th, it's going to be every other day with the exception of between games 4 and 5, which Sunday, 2 days off, and then Wednesday, every other day after that for the Panthers and the Leafs here. So, Emily, this series is already starting off with a little bit of spice for the Panthers and the Leafs, with Matthew Tkachuk taking a bit of a chirp, talking about high pressure series for the Leafs. Is like, we talking on the Pat McAfee show, saying, we've been in series that have been at higher stakes, while the Leafs have only made it to the second round twice since 2004. And also Auston Matthews on the other side of things. This is something new that we learned. Auston Matthews discussing about how Matthew Tkachuk loves to send his highlights to Auston Matthews via text messages. And these two have played in multiple international tournaments together, being in the same draft class, recently in Four Nations. And also Matthew Tkachuk has a connection with Mitch Marner, both playing junior hockey with the London Knights as well. I remember after game 3 of their first playoff series, I remember there was Matthew Tkachuk laid a punch on Mitch Marner, and then there was like a laugh back at him. So there's a part of me that is just thinks that this is just flat out hysterical. But then there's another part of me is like, Tkachuk, I don't know what his point in trying to send highlights to Auston Matthews is about. That's another part of me that questions that. So when you hear that, what do you think?
I mean, these guys are friends. Like, these guys go back so far. They all, go back to the national team development program. They've all
Yeah.
spent so much time together. And I think that is just sort of in their natures, in their personalities, to chirp each other, to have fun, to send silly things to each other as friends. I mean, they're obviously competitors, and this is going to be a very high stakes series, especially for the Maple Leafs. But yeah, I think it's just sort of all in good fun. And, this is what we want. We want personalities in the game. We want people who talk, who are interesting, who say things, who show who they are, and who they are is fascinating people. And so, Matthew Tkachuk being in some ways, the face of the NHL right now. He's not the best player. Obviously, that's, so somewhere up north of the border in Edmonton, you could actually argue who it is right now, maybe, but he's certainly the personality of the NHL, and that's so important for the game, to have those people who are willing to put themselves out there and are interesting enough to put themselves out there. So to me, it's all in good fun. We'll see how it turns out on the ice, but all in good fun.
Yeah, and speaking of Tkachuk, the Panthers did have a practice on Saturday, and Matthew Tkachuk was skating separately with strength and conditioning coach Maxime Ivanov there on the separate sheet of ice. And it's a luxury that the Panthers were able to finish the Lightning in 5 to give them a few days off. Even Maurice discussed about how the schedule tells the players what to do when it comes to the just how they manage things throughout the postseason for them. And also, here's one thing that was actually very that's a little admirable as well as a guy who tried. I'm not a goalie, but I like to also know what they're thinking. Sergei Bobrovsky skated on his home for 45 minutes without taking a shot, and also discussed the meditative side of things, of just skating and just getting the mind right. So when you think of Matthew Tkachuk taking that little bit of time to get his conditioning right, and also Sergei Bobrovsky going into getting his mind right prior to a series, like where do you think when you hear that?
I mean, I think everyone has the things that will get them prepared, and I have long been fascinated by Sergei Bobrovsky. His preparation is sort of legendary. The ways he treats his body and makes sure he's in the right both mental and physical space are extremely impressive. And this is a guy who's been doing this for so long. He's still going extremely strong, as a lot of people are getting into what would be the end stages of their career. So I don't think you can argue with what the results are of all that stuff. But yeah, I think where it comes to Matthew Tkachuk, I don't think there's any question that he's not 100%. I mean, you could see that he was limited to some degree in the first round. Extra time will help him for sure. Finishing the Lightning off, as you said, in 5 games was huge for the Panthers in getting themselves prepared to take on what will be a difficult series. But yeah, you could see those time on ice times creep up with Tkachuk in the first round. But again, I still think that, he is not 100%. We'll see if he is 100% when, tomorrow when they take the ice for game 1. But, he probably has a way to go, and they're managing as best they can with, what they have.
Yeah, and putting your bodies on the line for the Stanley Cup. I mean, hey, I find it hard to believe that he actually will be throughout the rest of the playoff run, no matter how long it will take for them, no matter how far they go for them. But going into this series, Paul Maurice was asked about what they can take away from the series previously, and Paul Maurice said that it's not much that you could take. I mean, there's still a lot of the same faces with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but their style of play has changed quite a bit. Different goalie for them. The blue line has been made over, the coach as well. So that's another thing that I'm very interested to see when it comes to this for the Leafs side of things, just about how the Panthers manage things, as they're not as much of a speed team as they were, as they're definitely getting more defensively responsible for them. But Brad Marchand, I know you've covered him quite a bit for being based in Boston. And I remember asking you after Game 4, is this the craziest game you've ever seen? And then you told me, no, Game 6, 2013, the 2 goals in less than 30 seconds for the Chicago Blackhawks at the TD Garden for them. But Brad Marchand has a lot of history against the Leafs. It's crazy. All 4 of his playoff matchups against the Leafs have gone the distance, 7 games, 28 games for him, 10 goals, 18 assists for him as well. A +7 for including 9 points in their 2019 matchup. So Brad Marchand, I mean, very familiar, but I believe this series will be a little different in just how you manage things against a team that maybe has a little bit more of that a little bit of a boost, knowing that Craig Berube is an experienced coach for what he did in St. Louis.
I mean, that's why they went out and got Craig Berube. I mean, this was the plan. This was the hope. You get a guy who has won a Stanley Cup, who has the gravitas that comes with having taken a team to a Stanley Cup win against Brad Marchand's Bruins, for that matter. But yeah, no, this is going to be a challenge. But I think that was the point, was that this is a Leafs team that has not been able to get over the hump, that has not been able to make that jump, and maybe Craig Berube is the coach that can get them there. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it has been a sort of a fascinating dance between Brad Marchand and the Bruins and the Leafs over the years. There's no question about that.
Yeah, and the fact that for the Panthers going the rest of the way, I mean, all 4 times for Brad Marchand against the Leafs, the Bruins have had home ice advantage. This time around, with the Panthers, they will not. The only time the Panthers could possibly have home ice advantage the rest of the way is if the St. Louis Blues and the Florida Panthers meet in the Stanley Cup final. So the Panthers will have to manage things on the road. Paul Maurice did speak about how as you move along for the playoffs, there's far fewer distractions. They don't have to worry about selling tickets on the road. That's a quote that he uses quite often. And for them, I mean, the fact that you're away from your family, you have more team bonding for dinners, and the fact that their game he discusses the checking lines for most teams, and that it's not for the Panthers. It helps that it's not a traditional checking line. I know that they've had Evan Rodriguez on the 4th line upgraded to the 2nd line, but also for the fact that for the Panthers 4th line, for them, a good amount of speed with Jesper Boquist, even though he hasn't brought the goals since January. AJ Greer is a guy who could get bruising to the opposition there. But I think that for the Panthers, I mean, it's still they've done it before previously in 2023, winning all 3 road games in Toronto. But I mean, great opportunity for them as they've not shied away from how they played their style of game on the road.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that, I mean, as we saw in the first round, the Panthers won all 3 games in Tampa. They are a very good road team, and they're just not cowed by much. This is not going to be a team that's intimidated to go into a visiting building, a loud building. They know what to do. They know how to play. I don't think they're worried at all. So I think they just say, okay, game's a game. We've been there. We've done that. No big deal.
Yeah, no doubt. And before we get out of here, as every round goes, NHL.com does release their picks for each series between each team for a round. So I want to get what you think will happen between the Florida Panthers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. I will give my prediction tomorrow, but I want to get what you have to say for this series.
I just sent my picks in, and I have to say I was very impressed by what I saw in the first round for the Panthers. I had picked the Lightning in the first round, but we're going with Panthers in the second round. So, I just think that this is a professional team that knows what to do, how to do it, and can turn it on when it needs to be turned on. Do I know that they'll go to the Stanley Cup final? I don't, but I think they're going to emerge into the Eastern Conference final.
Awesome. So, we will see if that manifests for the Panthers, as they are still trying to prove that they are still the standard in the NHL, as they were able to bring multiple pieces in to still complement their core that they have throughout the next 5 years. for them. But Amalie, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Before we get out of here, tell everybody where they can follow you and your work online.
Absolutely. I'm at Amalie Benjamin on X, and I believe I'm also at Amalie Benjamin on Blue Sky, and you can just check me out on NHL.com. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and hope to see you soon.
I will. Bye.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Amalie Benjamin, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.